There is a moment in every collapsing society when people stop acting and start waiting. Waiting for miracles. Waiting for signs. Waiting for God to fix what humans destroyed. History shows something terrifying. Sometimes faith didn't save civilizations. Sometimes it became the excuse to do nothing. Leaders told people, pray instead of preparing. Trust instead of reforming. Believe instead of taking responsibility. And while the masses waited for divine rescue, empires burned, cities starved, millions died. This episode is not about faith itself. It's about how faith was twisted into a shield against accountability. A way to avoid hard decisions. A way to silence warning voices. A way to escape reality. From ancient rituals to modern cults, these are the moments when belief became denial. And denial became destruction. Watch closely. Because history warns, this pattern always returns. Warning number 10. The Maya. When rituals replaced action. Deep in the jungles of Central America, the Maya civilization once ruled with breathtaking knowledge. They mastered astronomy, built towering pyramids, created complex calendars that predicted eclipses with precision. But around the 8th and 9th centuries, something began to go terribly wrong. The rains started failing, rivers shrank, crops withered, famine crept through the cities. Archaeologists today see clear evidence. Deforestation had damaged the ecosystem. Overpopulation strained resources. Water management systems were collapsing. The Maya leaders faced a choice. Reform agriculture. Reduce consumption. Change how society worked. But instead, they chose ritual. As drought worsened, sacrifices increased. More blood was offered to the gods. Kings performed dramatic ceremonies, piercing their own bodies, letting blood drip down temple steps. The logic was simple. The gods are angry. More faith will fix it. Instead of fixing irrigation systems, they built more temples. Instead of changing farming methods, they killed more captives. The more the environment collapsed, the more extreme the rituals became, until entire cities were abandoned. Tikal, Köpen, Calakmul, great stone cities swallowed by jungle. Faith was not the problem. Using faith to avoid responsibility was. Modern scientists now believe drought was survivable. Other civilizations adapted. The Maya didn't. Because leadership chose prayer over practical reform. They waited for divine rain, while society dried up and died. Present-day parallel. Even today, when climate disasters hit, some leaders still say, only God can help us. Instead of fixing infrastructure, instead of reducing environmental damage, instead of preparing communities, faith becomes an excuse for inaction. Future warning. What happens when future crises demand human solutions, but people only wait for miracles? Will the next great collapse also be blamed on God's will? Warning number 9. The Aztecs. Sacrifice over strategy. In the heart of ancient Mexico, the Aztec Empire rose as a military superpower. Its capital, Tenochtitlan, was one of the largest cities on Earth. But the empire had a terrifying belief. The sun itself needed human blood to keep rising. If sacrifices stopped, darkness would consume the world. So when disaster struck, The solution was always the same. More sacrifice. When drought hit, more hearts were cut out. When enemies threatened, more prisoners were slaughtered. When disease spread, even more blood flowed. Priests told rulers, the gods demand more. Instead of strengthening food storage systems, instead of improving sanitation, instead of developing medical responses, they doubled down on rituals. By the time Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 1500s, the Aztec society was already weakened. Starvation existed in some regions. Disease resistance was low. Political resentment was high among conquered tribes. Yet leadership believed, as long as sacrifices continued, the gods would protect them. And then, smallpox arrived. Thousands died in months. No ritual stopped it. No sacrifice slowed it. The empire collapsed rapidly, not just because of Spanish weapons, but because a society trained to rely on divine intervention never built resilience. Faith replaced planning. Present-day parallel. Even now, some communities reject medicine during outbreaks, saying, "God will heal us." History shows what happens when belief replaces preparation. Future warning. If future pandemics come stronger, will humanity respond with science and responsibility, or repeat ancient mistakes? Warning number 8. Medieval Europe. God's punishment, and the Black Death. In the mid-1300s, a horror swept across Europe unlike anything before. The Black Death. In just a few years, nearly 1/3 of Europe's population died. Cities turned into graveyards. Families vanished overnight. The smell of death filled the streets. But what made the disaster worse was how people understood it. Most leaders and religious authorities declared, "This plague is God's punishment for sin." Instead of improving sanitation, instead of isolating the sick, instead of studying patterns of infection, people were told to pray harder. Some groups formed flagellant processions. Men walked through towns whipping themselves, bleeding in the streets, begging God for forgiveness. Church bells rang constantly. Mass prayers replaced medical response. Worse, communities searched for sinners to blame. Jews were accused of poisoning wells. Thousands were massacred across Europe. Fear mixed with fatalism. Many believed, if God has decided our fate, nothing can be done. So cities stayed filthy. Rats continued breeding. Fleas kept spreading disease. Only much later did people realize. Clean water, waste removal, quarantines. These reduced deaths. But by then, millions were already gone. Faith itself wasn't the enemy. But using faith to avoid practical responsibility turned a disaster into an apocalypse. Present-day parallel. Even today, during outbreaks, some refuse treatment or prevention, claiming, "If God wills it, I will live." History shows ignoring responsibility multiplies suffering. Future warning. When the next global disease arrives, will humanity act quickly, or hide behind destiny again? Warning number 7. The Taiping Rebellion. When a man claimed heaven's orders. In 19th century China, a poor scholar named Hong Xiuquan failed the imperial exams multiple times. After a mental breakdown, he claimed to receive visions from heaven. Hong announced something shocking. He was the younger brother of Jesus Christ. And God had chosen him to destroy demons ruling China. Millions believed him. The movement promised a holy kingdom on earth, heavenly peace, God's direct rule. Peasants suffering from poverty joined in massive numbers. But as the rebellion grew, reality was ignored. Instead of building stable governance, Hong focused on divine laws and visions. Instead of organizing food systems, leaders preached constant prayer and purity. Whenever the army faced defeat, they said, "God is testing our faith." Whenever famine hit their territories, they said, "Heaven will provide." The rebellion captured huge areas, including the city of Nanjing. But poor planning destroyed them. Food shortages spread, disease ravaged troops, corruption appeared, yet leaders kept claiming divine protection. Eventually, Qing forces crushed the movement. The result: over 20 million people died, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Faith had inspired hope, but blind belief replaced responsibility. Divine claims silenced practical reform, and millions paid the price. Present-day parallel. Even now, some leaders claim God personally supports their movements, using divine language to avoid accountability when policies fail. Future warning: when people follow holy leaders without questioning, how many tragedies will repeat? Warning number 6. Ethiopian millennial movements, waiting for the end instead of fixing the world. Throughout Ethiopian history, several religious movements believed the world was nearing its end. One famous wave came in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Preachers told villagers the final judgment was coming soon. Christ would return. Earthly efforts were meaningless. Farming, useless. Saving food, pointless. Building infrastructure, why bother? Many followers abandoned their fields. Some sold possessions. Others stopped working completely. They gathered to pray and wait for heaven. But the end never came. Instead, droughts struck. Hunger spread. Communities weakened. When real challenges arrived, they had no resources, no stored food, no preparation. Thousands starved not because God willed it, but because people stopped taking responsibility for survival. Faith shifted from guiding life to escaping life. The tragedy wasn't belief in God. It was using belief as an excuse to stop acting in the real world. Present-day parallel. Even today, some apocalyptic groups tell followers, "Don't worry about education, careers, or society, the end is near." Which leaves people vulnerable when reality continues. Future warning: if more people abandon responsibility waiting for apocalypse, who will keep civilization functioning? Warning number 5. The modest war. When divine victory replaced strategy. In the late 1800s, Sudan was under Egyptian and British influence. Amid oppression and chaos, a religious leader named Muhammad Ahmad declared himself the Mahdi, the divinely guided savior promised in Islamic tradition. Thousands rallied behind him. They believed God had chosen them. Victory was guaranteed. Early successes against Egyptian forces strengthened this belief. British General Charles Gordon was killed in Khartoum. To the Mahdists, it proved heaven was on their side. But soon, reality caught up. The Mahdist state struggled with governance. Food systems collapsed. Weapons were outdated, but leaders kept telling fighters, "God will protect us from bullets." When British forces returned with modern machine guns, the modest army charged openly, confident in divine protection. At the Battle of Omdurman in 1898, over 10,000 modest fighters were killed in hours. British casualties were minimal. Faith had inspired courage, but blind certainty replaced strategy. Divine promise replaced military planning. And an entire movement was wiped out. Present-day parallel. Even now, some militant groups claim God guarantees victory, ignoring technology, logistics, and human limits. History's outcome is always the same. Future warning. If future conflicts are fought with belief instead of strategy, who will survive? Warning number 4. Cult collapses. God will save us, thinking. One of the darkest modern examples came in 1978, in the jungles of Guyana. A preacher named Jim Jones built a community called Jonestown. He promised a holy socialist paradise, protection from the evil outside world. Followers believed Jones spoke for God. When concerns arose: abuse, hunger, control, Jones said, "God is testing your faith." When government inspectors came, Jones claimed enemies were sent by Satan. Finally, when reality closed in, Jones convinced over 900 people to drink poisoned liquid, including children. He told them, "This is God's will. We will rise in heaven together." Faith had been twisted into obedience. Responsibility disappeared, critical thinking vanished, and hundreds died trusting divine escape. Jonestown is not alone. Many cults collapsed similarly. Leaders predicting apocalypse. Followers giving up homes, money, families. Waiting for miracles that never came. Until disaster hit. Present-day parallel. Even today, online cults and extremist groups promise salvation while demanding blind loyalty. Future warning. As crises increase, will more people run toward leaders offering spiritual escape instead of real solutions? Warning number 3. The Crusaders. When certainty led to catastrophe. In medieval Europe, church leaders launched the Crusades. They promised soldiers. God had commanded these wars. Anyone who died would go straight to heaven. Many believed divine protection made them unstoppable. Some armies marched without enough food, without supply lines, without preparation, because God will provide. Several crusades ended in disaster. Entire armies starved crossing deserts. Others were slaughtered after reckless attacks. One crusade ended before reaching the Holy Land. Most soldiers died of hunger and disease. Religious certainty replaced military planning. Faith replaced logistics. And thousands died unnecessarily. Present-day parallel. Even now, some political or religious campaigns promise divine backing while ignoring real-world consequences. Future warning. When leaders claim God supports reckless decisions, who pays the price? Warning number 2. Sectarian leaders who blocked reform. Across history, many societies faced moments where reform was necessary. Corruption had grown. Systems were broken. People demanded change. But some religious leaders declared, "Our system is divinely ordained." Questioning it is questioning God. In parts of the Ottoman Empire, some clerics resisted modern education. In Europe, church authorities once blocked scientific medicine. In various regions, reformers were labeled heretics. Progress was delayed for decades, even centuries. Not because change was impossible, but because faith was used as a wall against responsibility. Present-day parallel. Even now, some leaders block social, educational, or medical reforms using religious excuses. Future warning. How many future crises will worsen because change is called unholy? Warning number 1. Modern apocalyptic cults, waiting for rescue while life collapses. In recent decades, apocalyptic groups have risen across the world. Leaders predict exact end dates. Followers quit jobs, sell homes, pull children from school. They believe God will soon take us away. When the date passes, leaders claim a new revelation. Followers wait again. Some groups isolate themselves completely. No preparation for the future. No savings. No education. When reality hits, families fall into poverty. Mental breakdowns happen. Lives are ruined. Faith became an escape from responsibility, not a guide through life. Present-day parallel. Social media now spreads end-time panic faster than ever. Predictions go viral. Fear grows. Responsibility shrinks. Future warning. If society keeps choosing spiritual escape over real action, will the next collapse be self-inflicted? Across centuries, from jungles to empires, from ancient temples to modern cults, the pattern is always the same. When faith replaces responsibility, disaster follows. Belief is powerful, but when used as an excuse to avoid action, it becomes deadly. History doesn't attack faith. History warns against using God as a shield from hard choices. Because every collapse began with someone saying, "God will fix it," while humans did nothing. And every survival story began when people acted. The question is not about belief. The question is, when the next crisis arrives, will we pray and prepare? Or pray and wait?